Hello, this is Pam. I am a Stampin' Up! Independent demonstrator, and today I have a card to share with you. This uses the 4 feathers stamp set and the matching feathers framelits. That's the stamp set there, and then it has 2 framelits that match it. There's only 2 because there's only 2 sizes in the stamps. So that's the main stamp set that I'm going to use today. And I made this for a color challenge on Split Coast Stampers. If you haven't checked that site out, there's all kinds of stuff to see on there. There's challenges, there's tutorials, galleries galore of any kind of theme card or scrapbook page, boxes, all kinds of neat things that you can find over there. So check that site out. But the challenge was to use Lost Lagoon, Pear Pizzazz, and then Silver. So this is the card that I made for that challenge. And I thought I'd do a video on it because it's pretty. I like the layout. I like how it came out. And I don't do a whole lot of card videos, so I thought I'd share this with you today. So to start, the card base, this is an A2 size. I just cut a piece of the cardstock in half, so it's 5.5 by 8.5, and then you score it at 4 1/4, so that is your card base. And then all of the layers are a 1/4 inch smaller than the next size. So this card I started with the Lost Lagoon. On the one I'm going to make today, I'm going to start with the Pear Pizzazz. And actually, when I went to make this card, I realized I was completely out of the Pear Pizzazz cardstock. So this is the next closest thing. It's certainly celery. This is the color that they retired, I believe, last year. But I still had some left, and it's pretty close. It's not quite as dark as the Pear Pizzazz, but that's what I'm using. So, since your card front is 4 1/4 by 5.5, this next piece will be 4 inches by 5 1/4. So that layer is going to go next. And all I did was just I glued them all together. I did not put dimensionals or anything on the back of it. You could if you'd like, but for mailing, I think just having them flat, plus there's so many layers that I used, I just went with gluing them all together. So I'm using the Tombow liquid glue. You could use your tape runner, that's fine, but I just like to use that. So center up your cardstock to the card base and glue that down. So that's your first layer. And then the next layer is more of the Naturals white cardstock. This one is, again, a 1/4 inch less than that one. So this one would be 3 3/4 of an inch by 5, I believe. That's your next layer. Like I said, each layer is just a 1/4 inch smaller than the next. So whatever your card size is that you're using, just make sure each layer is just a 1/4 inch smaller. So center this one next and glue that one down. And then the next layer is the Lost Lagoon. I said, and it's a 1/4 inch smaller on each side than the next one. So this one, let me see where I'm at, 3.5 by 4 3/4 is your next layer. So go ahead and glue that one down. And center it up onto that one. I like the liquid glue because you can wiggle it around just a little bit before it totally sets. and dries. Let me adjust my camera. Okay. And then your last piece is the Naturals White cardstock, and that one would be 4.5 by 3 1/4. Now I've already stamped the sentiment onto this piece, and it actually is a stamp set from last year's holiday catalog. It's called Greetings of the Season, but I absolutely love the fonts on this stamp set. I love this one, and then the pretty Peace on Earth. Although it is retired, they have not put it in the clearance rack. It was still available up until August. So if Stampin' Up! Does a clearance rack blitz next month, which they usually do in December, you may be able to find that stamp set in there. So keep your eye out for that one. And what I did to get the sentiment on there straight, I love the Stampin' jig. It gets your, unless you're using a photopolymer set, then you don't really need that. But for a rubber stamp, I mean, you can kind of see where it is, but to get it, you know, exactly where you want, take your little clear sheet here and put it into the corner of that, ink your stamp, and then stamp it down onto there. And then take this piece and put it onto your cardstock wherever you want. That way you can see it. And then you take this little handle and you line it up again to the corners. And then you take your stamp and you ink it up again and you run it right down there. And that'll give you a straight stamping for greetings, or if you have like border stamps, that Stampin' jig works really great for that too, because you can still line those up. So that's my trick for that. Now this layer can get glued onto there since I already stamped it. I didn't use any ribbons or twines or anything in between the layers, so you can just stamp or glue them right down. Alright, now for the feathers, I use the same cardstock colors. In this case, it's certainly celery. But I stamped them in the same color. Now this is the Pear Pizzazz ink, and you can see it's a little bit darker than the cardstock, but that's fine, that works. This is the Lost Lagoon, and then this is the Silver Glimmer paper. And I cut them out with the framelit after I stamped them, and this is the shape that you get, goes right around there. This one's not stamped on, this one's just the shape. And a tip too for your Sizzix machine, your cutting plates. I've had a Sizzix machine for 7 years, I think, so I went through quite a few cutting pads. But there is a great tip to do with your cutting pads. Now these are the 2 cutting pads that I've been using for the last 6 months, and it's barely got a curve to it. Anybody that has a Sizzix machine knows your cutting plates will bow and curve and get absolutely, let me show you one, used up. And once they get so marred up like that, I mean, you'll see the impressions of that on your cardstock, so then you can't use it anymore. But that one's pretty bowed. But to prevent that from happening as fast as I said, I've had these for 6 months, and look, I always keep a clear plate on the top, and I do not cut on it. You can see some impressions on here from the framelits, but it's not actually cut into. And then this one is the one I actually cut into. So when you make your sandwich on your die cut machine, you know, you have your framelit. Always use a plate for the framelit, and then the top, don't cut on it at all. That way you won't get any impressions on your paper from where you have die cut onto the plate. And also flip them. Every time you die cut, flip it. So run it through this way, the top plate too. Run them through, flip it over to the other side, same with your top plate, flip it over, so the next time it'll run through. Every time I flip them over, and my plates are very good condition for 6 months of use. So that's my little tip for you on the cutting plates. I love it. I should have done that years ago. Alright, so back to the card. This one I am going to put the feathers the opposite directions. Lost Lagoon on this side, Pear Pizzazz on that side, and then the silver one I'm going to keep in the center. And all I did was run one little strip of glue down the center of these. I thought about curling them up, but I decided just to leave them flat. So stick that one down, and the same with the green one, and I'll leave the silver one for the center. And you can put that one, hold that one down, and then if you can kind of put your silver one here and see if you want to move that maybe a little bit in. That's why I like the Tombow glue, because it's not permanently stuck. Give it a little wiggle room. And then the silver paper, the back of it, if you have any of this glimmer paper, it's kind of shiny. So I'm actually going to use glue dots on the back. I just put 3 glue dots down the center of the die cut, because like I said, it's kind of, the glue will hold it, it just takes it a little bit longer to dry. So for speed, glue dots will hold instantly. So there's your feathers. And then for the embellishment, I use twine. This is the linen thread. It's kind of like twine, but it's linen thread. And I use 3 different strips of my linen thread, and to determine how long to make it, each one, all I did was I made a bow with just 1 piece. So I kind of made my bow in the size I want. I was like, oh, that's close enough. And then I leave a tail, and then I undo it. And then I cut that length, and then I just cut 2 more pieces that are the same length or close to it. That way I know I have enough, or I don't have too much of the linen thread. So that's kind of another little tip there that you can use when doing multiple layers of your twines or your linen thread. So now you can just create your bow with your all 3 pieces together. It kind of makes it a little bit easier too to tie a bow, I think, when you have different thicknesses. So get the bow however long you want the loops. I'm going to make those a little smaller. So just hold the center down. And I like the look that the from using the 3 different pieces. I mean, you can kind of loosen up your loops there and give, it makes it real loopy, extra loopy. I like that. So that bow's good. And then if you have too long a tails, and just cut them off. That one I kind of did, I frayed out the ends a little bit, and then I actually made them a little bit different lengths. So I cut some of the ends off shorter than the others, and some are longer than the others, just to give it a little bit more interest. And then kind of untwist the ends to kind of fray it out a little bit. So then there's your bow, or your twine bow. I said you can even fluff out your loops there and make them spread out. So to attach that, just use a glue dot right in the center of that, and then put that right into the center of all your feathers. Now the last thing I did was attach the sequins. These are the actually from the 2013-2015 In Colors sequins pack. There's circles, obviously the sequins, regular square, round sequins, and then there's these star shapes. Now, even though these are a different In Color family, they're a darker hue than what the actual cardstock is. So that's actually Coastal Cabana sequin star there, but I mean it is so close to the Lost Lagoon. And if I can grab a green one out of here, this is actually the here's one, pistachio pudding, mint green color. But I mean it's a lot darker than the cardstock. So those are the two that I used for that. So they're so much darker than the original colors. They were perfect for these. So I'm going to attach those down with glue dots. So just put a glue dot right into the center and stick those down. I can grab them. They're so thin. Alright, and a glue dot in the center of that. I'm going to try to get it as much in the center as I can so I don't have a whole bunch of glue dot hanging out the sides of it. Alright, so that's that. I have a glue dot stuck on me. And for the centers of the stars, I added a rhinestone because I didn't like the holes that were in the center of those. Those are more for like stringing them onto twine or like clear string. So I'm using the little tiny rhinestones. They're the same ones that are usually up here. These are the strips of ones, which I'm out of. Look at these scissors are absolutely way too big to get in there. Here's my little ones. You have to cut them in half or apart. Because they're kind of in a strip. See, they're all stuck together, but they're the same size as that. So you can, I use my paper piercing tool to pick them up because my fingers are nimble. I really can't pick them up with my fingernails. So attach the rhinestones right to the centers of the stars and it just fills that hole in. I think that looks cute. It looks festive. It could also be for winter. It wouldn't have to necessarily be for a Christmas card. These colors and the feathers and the stars would be perfect for winter, I think. I think it's really pretty. So that's all the tutorial I have for you today. If you'd like to see more of my projects, you can visit my blog. It is wearestampers.blogspot.com. And I hope you give this project a try. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.